bum, get out of here.
Last year, I interviewed a woman named Cheryl Taylor. The 63-year-old wore pink bunny ears on top of her head. She was living on a San Diego sidewalk after being evicted from her home. She said the people living in the luxury high-rise across the street didn't know her story. They'd never asked. They just yelled.
You're just dirty trash. Why do you have to be here?
It looks like a 45-minute plus.
Then this spring, I interviewed Chad Bordas. He was working 16-hour days as an Uber Lyft driver and selling cars online. He was also living in his car.
How do we get to a point where we devalue human life? To where, it's okay if we step over homeless people or, if you're sleeping in your car, it doesn't matter.
I know a lot of Californians worry about the state's growing homelessness crisis. Some are concerned with health risks, crime, and falling property values. Others work day in and day out to try to improve things. Shelter workers, advocates, police, paramedics, citizens, and politicians. It got me wondering about our collective capacity for empathy. And I looked to science for some answers.
Empathy is probably as native as any other sensory modality, hearing or vision or taste.
UC San Diego neuroscientist William Mobley says you can actually see empathy in brain imaging.
If you look at the parts of the brain that are activated when we feel pain or internal distress or sadness or even surprise, the same regions in the brain that are activated by those kinds of internal stimuli are also activated, at least they overlap with regions that are activated when we see pain or surprise in another.
Mobley says research shows people's own experiences can foster empathy. So can the way we talk about people who are struggling. It reminded me of Riverside Mayor Rusty Bailey. He refuses to call people living on his city streets homeless.
I've been calling them neighbors without homes.
How you doing, girl?
Mobley says once you change the language, the mindset can follow.
Your brain is saying, wait a minute, these are our friends, so that means that they're people that we like, that we support them, that we want to be part of what's good for them.
And that kind of thinking, practiced enough, can spark a powerful chain reaction.
Empathy changes everything. It absolutely prevents me from ignoring or diminishing the value of another human being. And if everybody's of immense value, how can I ignore anybody in suffering? And if I can't ignore anybody who's suffering, well, then the world just changes.
I ask Mobley Chad's question. Why does it seem that so many folks lack empathy?
It may just be that we're so darn busy. We're so beset by other stresses that it's hard for us to really be the empathic people that we want to be and maybe even aspire to be.
Researchers are looking at whether empathy can be inspired. A study published in the journal Clinical Psychology Review in 2011 found that loving kindness meditation and compassion meditation may intensify activity in the brain that relate to empathy. Another study by Stanford researchers in 2015 showed that the extended practice of loving-kindness meditation can spark behavioral changes linked to empathic responses.
Empathy is a personality trait similar to resilience, optimism, and all of these traits are partly genetic, only about 35 to 50%, which means that 50 to 65% is not genetic. It is affected by environment and behavior, which means it can be modified, which means it can be improved.
UC San Diego psychiatrist and neuroscientist Dilip Jeste says even something as simple as keeping a gratitude diary can stimulate empathy.
We need it for our survival. Without empathy, human species will not survive.
It is a lesson many people, especially homeless people, have learned for themselves. Remember the woman with the bunny ears, Cheryl Taylor, whose address was San Diego's streets? She said she wore those pink bunny ears to make people smile. Amita, Sharma, KPBS News.